All right, so I am here with a High Point and KA legend, nicknamed the Wizard, Shane Connolly. What a moment this is. First video ever talking about college football, and I had to ask the Wizard, the guy that is the man when it comes to college football. So Shane, obviously, Sunday was a huge day. I wish we could have talked yesterday, but obviously there was a lot going on. But here we are. Sunday was a huge day. The College Football Playoff Committee dropped their playoff rankings, and obviously a lot of controversy. Notre Dame was left out, BYU was left out, Alabama stayed in. I want to hear your first thoughts on the rankings so far. Obviously, it's been a couple days, but let me get your first thoughts on what actually just happened this past weekend.
Yeah, I think the big thing is Alabama, number one. But for the most part, I think, they knocked it out of the park. They got a lot of things right. Indiana obviously moving up to number one with that big win over Ohio State. But you see the likes of BYU, Notre Dame, Vanderbilt, and Texas being left out, which begs the question, do we make this a 16-team playoff? And what does it look like going forward if it is a 16-team playoff? Do we have play-in games? Is the G5 going to still get two spots in the college football playoff? Are we going to go more by rankings, by wins, strength of schedule, things like that? I think, when you look at Notre Dame, they're a great team, but those two losses early in the year killed them in the eyes of the committee. Um, Head to head, that's a big thing that they were looking at Sunday when the selection came out, and it came down to Miami beating, Notre Dame. But like I said, it's tough. I think Notre Dame belongs in the college football playoff. They got hot. They went, 10-0
Yeah,
after
exactly.
losing their first two games, and they were making all the right strides at the right moments. So I think it's a really tough situation. And like I said, it begs the question of, do we make this a 16 team playoff in the near future?
Yeah, no, exactly. And I'm going to be a little biased. I've grown up my whole life as a Notre Dame fan. I've had people in my family go to Notre Dame. And I've actually visited that campus twice. I went to two football games when I was a kid. And so I love them, you know. And I feel like in the past too, they've had years since they're independent where obviously they play kind of a crappy schedule compared to everyone else, you know, because they get to make their own schedule. They're not in a conference, but and obviously, you know, sometimes they'd go undefeated and they make the playoff and they'd get exposed. They'd get smoked by an Alabama or a Clemson, and everyone would be like, all right, this is a joke. I don't want to watch them play in the playoffs anymore. There's so many other teams that deserve it. But obviously, once Brian Kelly left, everything kind of changed. Marcus Freeman took the reins as the head coach, and ever since then, we've been a completely different program. Last year, we saw it. You know, we made the playoffs, and honestly, I didn't think we were going to win a game. I thought we were going to get smoked. Like maybe we'd beat Indiana, but then we'd had to play Georgia, and I was like, we have no chance because we've never won those games. And last year, it all changed. We beat Georgia, we beat your Penn State in a great game, obviously, and Ohio State was dominating us, but we came back and we were one stop away from having a chance to tie that game in the national championship. So it kind of changed everything. And then this year, we have a freshman quarterback on the road at Miami in his first ever start. And obviously, Miami was better at that point in the season. You know, we got kind of dominated, but we still only lost on a game-winning field goal, you know? And then the next week, it was an all-time shootout with the number 17 in the country right now in the SEC and Texas A&M. And all we have to do is hold on to a snap on an extra point, and then even after that, on the last 15 seconds of the game, on the last play of the game where Marcel Reed throws that miracle touchdown pass to beat us, they missed a holding call, a blatant holding call, which would have changed everything. Notre Dame probably wins that game if they call that. And then we're not even talking about this. They're 11-1 and they probably have a bye, you know, but whatever. They lose the first two games by a total of 4 points, by the way. They go on to dominate every other team, and the whole year, right? My problem with the committee is that I get it. Miami beat us. But 5 weeks ago, we were number 10, I believe, and Miami was 18, right? So we're in. We're in. The 10 seed is in because obviously the 11 and 12 are going to be the automatic bids to if, you know, Virginia won the ACC or if Duke won, obviously James Madison got in, which is what eventually happened. But we were always in for the last 5 weeks. The last 5 weeks, Shane. And then all of a sudden, obviously Miami started winning games. They won out, but we also won out. And my biggest issue was that we were number 9 and Alabama was number 10, right? We smoke Stanford, not even close, dominate them. Alabama plays a brutal game at Auburn and wins by 7, barely. They had a fourth down play where they scored, and the committee used that fourth down play as, oh, like, we like the way Alabama played at the end of that game, so we're going to switch them in Notre Dame. So then it was kind of like, all right, what are we doing here? Like, they don't deserve to move up after that, but they did. So they moved up to 9, we moved down to 10, but we're still in. We are still in, and we don't even play in any game this weekend. Neither does Miami. Miami doesn't even play in the ACC championship, which had a 7-5 team win, which is a joke. That conference is a joke. And the fact that they couldn't even play in that game just should say enough about them, about their season. So whatever. We're 10. Alabama gets embarrassed. Embarrassed by Georgia. They have -3 rushing yards, Shane. -3. I'm sorry I'm going on this rant, but like think about that.
Agreed.
They got
Agreed.
embarrassed. It was like they shouldn't even been on the same field as Georgia. Obviously, they beat them earlier in the year, but things changed. They got worse. They obviously got worse. And I mean, BYU loses to Texas Tech twice this year. They lose in the conference championship. They move down. Obviously, Ohio State, you're going to have to switch them in Indiana after they lose to Indiana, but they still move down after losing the conference championship. You're going to tell me Alabama, after getting embarrassed, doesn't move down? How does that make sense? I want to hear that from you. I get it. Like Notre Dame, Miami, the head-to-head has to come into play. They did the right thing there. But Bama doesn't even move down to 10 at that point. What are we doing? I want to hear your thoughts on that. That's insane.
You're right. It makes absolutely no sense. And it goes back to, the SEC bias, things of that sort. Again, Bama, they couldn't get anything going against Georgia. I think they went three and out,
Yeah.
interception, three and out. They couldn't get anything going. They had like 3 points in the first half, if any. I'm not sure if they had any points, but at the end of the day, they got smoked. They should not have been out on that field with Georgia. They were out game planned by Kirby Smart.
Yep.
Ty Simpson couldn't get anything going. Their defense, kept them in the game. It was 14-0 at halftime or 14-3. But at the end of the day, you can't not penalize Alabama for that performance in the SEC championship game. And, it makes no sense why you would move Notre Dame down after not playing a game, but Alabama gets smoked and you don't move them down to 10, you don't move them down to 11 or 12 even. It's it's a little weird. Again, like I said, the 16 team playoff is something that college football needs.
Oh,
And this selection committee botched a couple things. And I think if, there was a 16 team playoff, it would have made a little bit more sense in terms of, I think, Alabama, Vanderbilt, Texas, Notre Dame, BYU, teams like that deserve to be in the
they
playoff.
all deserved it. That's the
Yeah.
thing. The fact that we all have to sit there now and witness James Madison go to Oregon, and I hate to say it, it's not college basketball. You're
No.
not going to have a crazy 15 seed go on a miracle run. With NIL especially, football team like Big Ten teams and SEC teams are going to destroy these schools. James Madison they have no chance. Even if they somehow beat Oregon, they're not going to win the championship. They can't, they literally cannot do it. Same with Tulane. Tulane already played Ole Miss earlier in the year, and now they get a rematch. Guess what that score was? It was 59 to
40,
10.
45-10. They
Yeah, or
lost by
something.
35 points.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Who wants to rewatch that? Like I don't care. I hate to say it. I'd rather see it doesn't even have to be Notre Dame. I'd rather see a BYU team make it, who actually probably deserves it because their only two losses are to a top 5 team. You know? Like Bama, I love how we're all talking about like they have a brutal schedule, they already beat Georgia, they lost to Oklahoma. Are we gonna forget that they literally lost to Florida State week 1?
Yeah.
Florida State's horrible. Like we're gonna just it didn't happen. Didn't happen. What are we doing? How do you just like breeze past that? The fact that they lost to a horrible Florida State. They didn't even lose. They got embarrassed. But they could play in an extra game. BYU could play in an extra game. They move down and get screwed over. Bama though, oh yeah, let them play the extra game, get embarrassed on everyone's watching that game too. They got embarrassed. They don't even move down one spot.
Yeah.
I just
And keep in mind, Bear Bachmeier got hurt in the second drive. He could
yeah,
barely walk/run the rest of the game, which I think should be taken into account as well.
yeah,
Obviously Texas Tech great team. They have a chance to win the national championship this year. I don't care what anyone says.
Yeah,
They
easily. I agree.
played very, very well, and their defensive line, linebackers, the likes of Jacob Rodriguez, people like that are gonna, bode well for a national championship run. And I think they got a real shot in the next couple weeks.
Yeah, no, I agree. I feel like the top four are right. The top four, like if we had the old format, which we've had over the last like 10 to, 12 years of just, the top four get in, like the top four is perfect. I would love those games. It's just like if you're going to expand, you have to do it the right way. The committee should have taken into account, all right, let's say we love having all the conference winners in, right? But let's say we have a situation like we just had this year where the ACC is not good. It's
Mhm.
just not good. And let's say a team like Virginia, which they did, loses. It shouldn't just automatically go to the next conference winner. In that scenario, it should be, all right, if the team isn't in the top 15, they are not getting in. Then we go to just whoever we believe are the next best two teams to fill out the 11 and 12 seeds. But somehow, some way, I don't know who's in charge. That's also the problem with college football right now. It's such a great sport, and we're just wasting it because there is just no person that wants to take charge and just take control of this horrific situation. We're just I mean it's such a mess when it comes to the portal, when it comes to, conferences and the alignment of conferences right now, how you have Stanford and Cal in the ACC. Literally teams that are on the Pacific Coast playing in the Atlantic Coast Conference. What is going on? And then you have the Big Ten have 18 teams in that conference. I mean, it's just there's so much it's such a mess. And
Yeah.
like we need someone that's just going to take control of everything and just implement a better system because it really all it takes is one person in charge takes control of the entire situation and it's all fixed and that's it. Like why is it so hard to figure this out? Like
With NIL is just the wild, wild west right now. It's created a situation where obviously money is, a huge thing to these schools and these players. And, the bigger the conference, the more time you get on TV, on Fox, on ESPN, the likes of those. So it's bringing in money for these schools. And right now, like I said, it's just a wild, wild west.
I know.
There's not a lot of, regulations or limitations on the amount of money schools are able to spend on their players or things of that sort. So kind of, like Nick Saban said, we need a college football commissioner who is going to make these decisions. And who better than Nick Saban? We need someone with experience, someone obviously that's been in the game and he's had skin in the game for a while. He's on College Game Day now. He's a very likable guy. I think we need someone like Nick Saban in a position like a CFB commissioner that is able to kind of handpick the CFB selection committee and make changes, to these conferences. Maybe we put a cap on how much money teams can spend on their NIL
Oh yeah.
and the transfer portal, or maybe when these kids they go and they sign a 2-year deal at the school, they have to stay there for 2 years. They can't transfer after a year if they're unhappy with their playing time. So, there's just a lot going on with conferences and kids transferring and it all comes down to money at the end of the day, obviously, but it's just a tough situation to be in because, we don't have anyone leading us. There's not really a lot, to work with in this day and age of NIL. It's, just money, 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 pretty much. That's it. I don't know.
Yeah.
That's all I
No,
can tell.
I mean, you said it the best. I feel like I mean, like, there hasn't been a sport I've seen in my life that needs a commissioner more than college football does right now. And I feel like Nick Saban, obviously, like you just said, is the perfect answer for that. He's the most respected guy by a mile. Everyone would listen to him. There would be no, I feel like everything he'd do would make complete sense. It's just a matter of obviously if he wants to do it and if we could just get a control over this situation because there's so much wrong in this whole day and age of college sports and everything that's gone on in college football. And in my opinion, I feel like they should just get rid of conferences in football. Every other sport, go ahead, have conferences, have conference championships, but college football at this point you just get rid of conferences because at this point it's just scheduling. You got to just get rid of it. You have obviously like keep the rivalry games. You still have like Alabama's versus Auburn's, Michigan, Ohio State's, but everything else should just be you make your own schedule. You can keep your rivals, you make your own schedule though. No more conference championship games because that's just becoming a complete waste. If Alabama can get smoked like they just did, and still make the playoffs, not move down one spot. Meanwhile, 2 years ago, Georgia, who was number one in the country in 2023, lost to Alabama by a touchdown or a one-score game. They moved down 5 spots. But all of a sudden now it's different. All of a sudden, Alabama can get embarrassed by 3 touchdowns and they don't move down at all. That makes sense, because that all changed. It's a joke, so you just got to get rid of the conferences. Like you said, expand to a 16 team playoff, right? John Gruden also I saw said it where it's like you have the 9 play the 16 on conference championship weekend instead of having the conference games because they mean nothing now. You have 9 play 16, 10 play 15, 11 play 14, 12 play 13. The winners of those games then go into the 12 team format, right? And then you have 5 versus 12, whatever, 6 versus 11, whoever won those games in the first round and then that's it. It's such an easy fix. I don't know why it's so hard. You get rid of the automatic bids too. Maybe if you want, you can have the 16 seed be like a Tulane, like one of the group of 5 teams that wins their conference. The best one, they can get the 16 seed. Because at that point, what really is the debate? You're gonna have, a Michigan team that lost 3 games and kind of really wasn't good. You want them in? Oh, like at that point, it's not a big argument. And then you get to see the best possible matchups. You get that, the Texas versus Miami, BYU versus Notre Dame, like that's what people want to see. I don't want to watch James Madison play Oregon. I'm good. Who wants to watch that? So I feel
No.
like it's an easy fix, right? Like,
And if you look at their strength of schedule, I think James Madison was ranked 121 in the country in strength of schedule. And you're
exactly.
sending them out to play Oregon. Obviously, they might give them a game the first, 2 drives, but after that, I see Oregon beating them by 4+ touchdowns.
Exactly.
That's what sucks. I mean, you want to see a great game in the first round of the college football playoffs, and you see a game like this. You see another rematch in Tulane and Ole Miss, and another rematch in Alabama
Yeah.
and you.
I want to see new matchups. I don't want to
Yeah.
see the same thing. Like, it's just,
That's the point of the playoff. The point of the playoff is to have the best play the best, obviously, but as fans, we don't want to see these rematches. And like we were talking about earlier, Alabama got destroyed in the conference championship, and they didn't move down one spot.
yep.
And they're playing, Oklahoma away. Oklahoma's got a great defense. I think they're just as good as Georgia. So I'm not sure, how much they're going to be able to change before they play
Yeah,
Oklahoma,
exactly.
coming off 2 underwhelming performances against Auburn and Georgia.
No, 100%. I agree. It's so frustrating. Like, I get it. It's fair. It's the right thing to do, obviously. But like, and you can't really think about matchups in that scenario. You have to just put who you think, deserves to be in that spot. But I mean, if we're being real, I feel like it's such an underwhelming first round matchups. Like, there's really not one game. I guess the A&M versus Miami game is interesting,
That'll
because
be interesting.
yeah, those are the 2 teams that beat Notre Dame, so we get to see which one's better. But other than that, like I don't need to see Alabama play Oklahoma again. Like I already saw it. I'd rather see, if Alabama moved down, I'd rather see them play A&M. They haven't played A&M yet. That's a good game. And then I'd rather see Miami play Oklahoma.
Mhm.
Like I don't know why that was so hard. So there's so much wrong with that. And I also wanted to get your opinion on, even like we're talking about like, transfer portal and, NIL when it comes to players and like teams and stuff like that. But I wanted to get your opinion on coaches leaving and there being no penalty. Like, a perfect example is Lane Kiffin and how, he literally, his team has a chance to win it all. They're the 6th seed. And obviously LSU was probably a better job, but I mean, you couldn't have worse timing, and the fact that he almost took the entire staff with him, so there would be no coaches for Ole Miss in a playoff game, is insane. And there's no penalty whatsoever. I feel like there has to be some restrictions on that. The fact that you can just leave your team, and then you screw over that program, and they have to just have a full reset, at the worst time. It's just that's also another mess. I wanted to hear your opinion on that.
Yeah, I think, even though Ole Miss is perceived to be in kind of a weird spot right now, I think they're in a great spot going to this playoff. They got every single one of their coaches back besides Lane Kiffin.
Yeah.
there's no bad blood between those coaches and the program. They got their offensive coordinator Charlie Weiss back, who obviously boarded the plane with Lane Kiffin to go to LSU, but he's back.
Yes, I
He
saw that.
wants to win a championship. They got Pete Golding, who worked with Nick Saban for 5 years at Alabama, who has a lot of experience working for the top coaches in the country and playing the top teams in the country. He said in a interview the other day that at Alabama they played, Georgia twice a year. They play them during the season and in the conference game, conference championship. It's the same thing with Tulane. He's got them in a good place to, I think they're going to destroy Tulane. I think they're going to beat them worse than they beat them the first time. But like I said, I think they're in a great spot. I think they're going to make a great run. It sucks that Lane Kiffin left. He did what he had to do,
Yes,
but
I
it's
agree, but
just it's rough timing. It sucks. And for him to, kind of go out the way he did, trying to take coaches and poach players, things like that, isn't a great look for him and isn't a great look for him going to LSU. Obviously, he's tried to do a lot of damage control as of late, but like I said, I think, Ole Miss is in a great spot. They're focused on playing Tulane and winning that first college football playoff game. It's in the past, and from what I've read on Twitter, the message boards, things like that, the players are, they're ready to go, they're happy, and they're kind of, just happy this whole thing is over. It was a lot of distraction for the team and took away from a lot of their season. You look at Trinidad Chambliss, who's got more touchdowns and more passing yards, or more passing yards, obviously less touchdowns than Fernando Mendoza, but he's not even in the Heisman
yeah,
conversation. You
that's
got people like Q and Lacey. He's obviously had 90 more carries than Jeremiah Love, but he's not even in the conversation, not even once this year. And I think it has to do with Lane Kiffin taking it off of them and making this whole coaching kind of carousel thing about himself. When you look back, a month ago, this whole started around I think the Florida game. His family went out to Gainesville, saw the city. They went to LSU, saw the city, and it was being portrayed in the media as obviously he was leaving and looking at other places. But that just takes away from your team, your season, and what you're trying to accomplish at the end of the day. And looking back at it, I think he knew he was going to leave right from the get-go to go to LSU. It was just a matter of how much money they were going to give him and the NIL pool. They
yeah.
have a lot of money and Louisiana has the most draft picks in the NFL. So it's a great recruiting ground and a place that he's obviously going to do well. But he's had five bad exits from,
Which is not a good look at
yeah.
all.
And at some point, you got to look yourself in the mirror and say, is it me or is it, the places I'm working for? And
Yeah.
at the end of the day, I think it's him. But like I said, it's a tough decision. I think he made the right decision going to LSU. It's just bad timing and the way he handled it wasn't the greatest.
No, 100%. I feel like that situation's definitely it's a hard thing, to deal with as a coach. Obviously I think that's the job he really wanted. And that's probably the best job in college football when it comes to resources, NIL, the Louisiana pipeline. You get so many players from that state that want to play for LSU. And it has such a great history. Ole Miss is not really like that. But he was still able to make that program his and really turn that program into a powerhouse. That's why I feel like you finally get them over the top to get in the college football playoff, and now you're gonna leave. Like I feel like that's
Yeah,
such a bad look.
you're
Like
going there to win a national championship, but you have a national championship caliber team right in
that's
front of you with a chance to win a national championship. Obviously, it's, rough timing, but I think if he stayed at Ole Miss for another year, maybe signed a contract extension, what if the Alabama job opens up?
I was just about to
I
ask you that.
know he's
Yeah,
going to leave the LSU job in a couple of years if that Alabama job opens up. So it's tough because, he's obviously doing what's best for him and his family, money wise and recruiting wise and things like that. But Alabama is going to come knocking at some point before the end of his career, in my opinion. And I think he's going to leave. I don't think he stays at LSU if Alabama comes knocking.
yeah, I saw that. I saw he was. I mean, Todd McShay, I saw posted it. He was waiting to see if Alabama lost to Auburn, this past on rivalry weekend, and he was going to see if Alabama would end up firing Kalen DeBoer. or he would just move on and go to Penn State. I saw that. That was a rumor because he's a big Midwestern guy. Obviously, Penn State's the best job you can get in the Midwest. And then he would have taken the Alabama job, and that would have been unbelievable. An insane turn of events. Obviously it didn't happen, but I feel like you said, if that job opens up, I know for a fact he's the top guy for it. That's his dream job right there. He obviously worked there. He was the offensive coordinator with Saban when they were, kind of that dynasty in the mid 2010s. But it's just crazy that this guy, he could keep, getting up and leaving and just kind of like leaving these programs in the dust, and there's no penalty. I feel like there has to be a penalty though. Kind of like what the NFL does, where you can't just steal a coach from another team. Obviously it's different. It's college, it's pretty much like promotions, because you go from, a group of five team like Tulane's coach and North Texas's coach,
Yeah.
and even James Madison's coach, they're all moving up to the SEC, um,
Just going from rival to rival is something
that's
that, you
that's
can't keep a
yeah,
coach around for.
that's the worst look, because now, you're gonna keep leaving and you have more and more programs that hate you and fan bases that hate you. He's already done this to Tennessee, Ole Miss, and if he ever were to leave LSU now to go to Alabama, I mean, he's gonna have to play all these teams again. So you have to go into this hostile environment, and it's just, and also as a player, why would you ever want to play for a coach that does that? Coming out of high school, I don't want to, commit to LSU. In the back of my mind, you could leave in the middle of the night to go to Alabama if that job ever opened up. Like you can just screw us all over again. So
Yeah.
I don't know. I just
It's tough. With the NFL, you obviously have the end of the season, and then coaches are obviously allowed to talk to other teams.
exactly.
But in college, you have the second semester starting January, in between January 5th and 15th. So these kids need to get enrolled. Things need to get moving. It's hard to enroll a kid mid-semester, miss out on credits, things like that. So again, there has to be some way to figure this out. I'm not the guy to figure that out. I think, again, Nick Saban is someone that can be a huge, valuable asset to college football in terms of being a commissioner and giving ideas to, the conferences, the coaches, and CFB as a whole. Like we said, the 16 team playoff, fixing the NIL, the Wild Wild West when it comes to, when coaches can transfer to other schools and when players can go to other schools, they can, you know, quit mid-season, enter the transfer portal, and keep their eligibility because they didn't play 4 years or they didn't play 4 games.
Exactly.
So it's again, it's a tough situation to be in for all these teams that, want to win a national championship. Like I said, Notre Dame, Vanderbilt, Texas, and BYU are, very deserving of being in the college football playoff, and they're not going to get a chance. It's just a weird situation, but I think it's something that college football can learn from at the end of the day. And, I hope in the very near future that the 16 team playoff is implemented because it would make things a lot more interesting, but we're going to get better games. We're going to get to see teams like Vanderbilt, BYU, Notre Dame, and Texas, like I said, get a chance to go and give themselves a shot at winning a national championship.
Yeah. No, 100%. You said it best. You said it best. I feel like, you kind of covered everything that, we kind of just talked about when it comes to just like the mess that we have right now. And I feel like it's such an easy fix. We just need someone to take lead of the situation and, establish rules. Like you commit to a school out of high school, you should sign a contract so you can't transfer and just continue to pick up money from every other school that you go to. And once that contract runs out though, then you're eligible to transfer if you really want to, or you can renew the contract. Like that's what it's come to. I hate to say it. It's if we're going to continue to kind of try to be like a professional league, then you have to
Yeah.
just, establish a CBA. You have to have a commissioner. You have to have rules in place. There has to be penalties for coaches leaving to go to another school, especially in a conference, kind of like what Lane Kiffin's doing. All that stuff has to be implemented, if you want to have, all like we shouldn't be having this conversation. Notre Dame, BYU, Texas, and Vanderbilt should have a chance if we're gonna have, a league like this where an expanded format is, has been implemented. Like those teams deserve a chance, especially over Tulane and James Madison. That's what like it's not that hard. It's if you've watched Notre Dame and Vanderbilt and Texas and all these teams play, you know that they deserve a chance. They have to. And the fact that they don't have a chance, it hurts. It kills me. It kills me. And I don't blame, I feel like everyone's kind of calling Notre Dame soft for
Hmm.
opting out of the bowl game. I think this is the first domino to fall, and a lot of these teams saying, I'm not helping ESPN, who is handcuffed, with the SEC and the ACC because they have a contract with them and they want to see those teams make it, in the college football playoff. I'm not gonna benefit ESPN. I'm not gonna play in the Pop-Tart Bowl. That means nothing just so they can get their ratings up. I don't care. And if you're gonna call me soft, go ahead. I'm gonna send the message. I'm gonna be the first team to be like, you know what? Oh man, we missed the playoffs. You know what? It's okay. We'll play in the Pop-Tart Bowl now. BYU, let's have a good time. We'll practice for 3 weeks and we'll play in a meaningless game where we get to slide down a pop and eat a Pop-Tart if we win. Like I don't care. I don't want to do that. I'd rather enjoy the holidays, focus on, recruiting. If I have my good players that are going to go to the NFL, they're not going to play in the game anyways. So let them, get ready for the NFL draft. The younger, underclassmen, they can get ready for the spring. And that's it. I don't want to worry about a game that means nothing. The people that are calling them soft, you have no idea what you're talking about. It's a
I
joke.
agree.
It's a joke. It's
I
just
agree. I think, Notre Dame obviously deserved to be in the college football playoff, but they got, I think, 3 or 4 5 stars coming in. They have a huge recruiting class. I think top five in the country. They're going to do a lot of great things next year. And, why would you
not
take an
worth
extra 3 weeks to prepare for a bowl game when you can bring these new guys in and start preparing for the next season? They got a great quarterback. He's obviously only a redshirt freshman. He's going to be there for a couple more years and he's going to do some great things. I think next year, like I said, is going to be a great year for Notre Dame football. Your
it.
schedule isn't super crazy, but I think a big win over Miami next year gets you, into the college football playoff. And like I said, the 16 team expansion is something that they should do. And if that happened this year, you guys are in.
Yeah.
So it's just a tough situation. And going back to the Lane Kiffin situation, someone made an interesting point the other day when I was watching something. If a coach leaves like that mid-season, maybe the Ole Miss players aren't allowed to transfer to LSU.
I would
Maybe
love
there
that.
should
Yeah.
be a clause or something in there that, you can't follow your coach if he leaves midseason to the
Yeah.
school he goes to. You got to transfer somewhere else
That's a good
or something.
penalty. Yeah.
So I think, implementing things like that could be beneficial for the game. And obviously, when it comes to NIL, you made a great point of, the contracts, maybe signing a 2-year deal or a 3-year deal, depending on how much you like the school or what they're giving you, things like that. What's tough, and Georgia, they obviously are testing the waters right now, is a lot of these players, they're getting the NIL packages for the 1 or 2 years. They have a contract or whatever, but they leave after a year. And the
Yeah.
school, there's a lot of muddy waters when it comes to this. But Georgia, the other day, they started the process of suing one of their ex edge rushers
Wow.
because he left, I think, a year into his contract when he had a 2-year deal with the university. So I think it's something that, players are going to start getting penalized for in the near future. But I think, right now it's just NIL is a very new kind of addition to college football, and it's turned it into the minor leagues almost, like the
Yeah.
minor
Literally.
football league. So it's again with new things that come like this, there's going to be obviously challenges that arise, but I think in the next couple of years, there's going to be a lot more beneficial rules or regulations added to college football, just based off of what we've seen in the past couple of years, going from a 14 playoff to now a 12-team playoff. I think it's gotten a lot better and they're obviously moving in the right direction. It's something that'll take time to change, but I like the direction that they're going right now. It's
Yeah.
just a matter of can we get Nick Saban in as the college football committee guy or the commissioner? I think he would do great things for the sport or someone like that that has been around the game for a while, knows the game, understands how the game works. So I think there's a lot that goes into it, but it'll be interesting to see how the next couple of years go.
Yeah. I'm hoping, like you just said, like I mean, it's not like it's, the complete end of the world. I'm just hoping in the future that things get fixed and, it's for the better. But I'm finding out right now that we have somehow 3 minutes and 15 seconds left in the meeting because I don't have the pro on this computer. But
So,
I definitely wanted to finish up with you talking about Penn State. Obviously,
yeah.
like I want to hear your thoughts. Obviously, as a Penn State fan, I don't want to not bring it up, but obviously they hired the Iowa State head coach. I want to hear kind of like as a fan what you're expecting to come from this hire.
Yeah, he was an amazing coach at Iowa State. He turned down a couple NFL jobs
The
and
Jets.
turned
Yeah.
down multiple college jobs across the country. So I think number one, it's a great hire. And number two, he won the same amount of games as James Franklin. He won the same amount of top 10 games as James
Yeah.
Franklin at Iowa State in half the games and probably a third of the resources that Penn State has. I think, James Franklin is a great program builder, but it was time for him to go. It was a great 12 years, and Matt Campbell's going to bring a fresh perspective and a fresh, face into the program. I think the guys are going to love him, and I think they're going to spend big this
Okay.
transfer portal window.
Better.
So,
They
I'm
don't
excited
have
to see what
any
he does.
commits.
I know we lost all of our commits. Obviously, it's tough, but they committed for James Franklin, not to Penn State,
Exactly. Yeah. You've learned
It's
that.
tough, but like I said, I think we're going to go really, really hard in the transfer portal. They're prepared to spend, I think, 20 plus million in the transfer portal. So I'm hoping that we get some established guys. I know that Sam Levitt might be hitting the transfer portal soon. He's from the Big 12. Maybe he comes over with Matt Campbell. Maybe he goes to the SEC. Who knows?
Yeah.
But I think, Matt Campbell, great hire. Excited to see what he does. Excited to see the staff that he puts together, but it's going to take time. It's going to take
Yeah.
until, the spring next summer to see how this team really looks and, if we can bounce back. I know that we will bounce back, but, it's going to take a couple years. We're going to have to rebuild and kind of, you know, get a good QB and like Drew Aller, things like that. So it'll be interesting to say.
100%. All right, Shane, we don't have much time left in this I guess time limit thing for
Yep.
Zoom. But thank you so much for taking time out of your day to join the podcast. That was a very good video and kind of just a breakdown of college football. But yeah, no, Shane, thank you so much. I appreciate it, and hopefully in the future we'll do a review on, Penn State or whatever college football team wins it all. Maybe, we could do a video on that. But
Yeah, I'd
again,
love to.
yeah,
Thank
thank
you
you.
for having me on. It was a pleasure talking college football.
Yeah, no, perfect. All right, Shaner.